I've been asked to speak about the reason why I wrote the birth of the Black Panthers. My brother was a very charismatic character. In fact, when we lost him at the Battle of Britain display in 1947, it was a very difficult time. I asked my eldest sister, what she would say to anybody about my brother. And she said in very simple terms, I would feel sorry for anybody that never knew him. That was the type of character he was. Very charismatic, very artistic, great presence of mind, very athletic. So I thought with his logbook, his diaries, his letters, that I may be able to achieve something. But this didn't come to fruition until my sister, my younger sister that is, who'd had a picture of the Spitfire with the Black Panther on it, painted for her to remember her brother by. And the artist liked the picture so much that he held an exhibition in Hornchurch. I'm not quite sure of the year that was, but somebody walked in to see that exhibition, and it transpired it was a gentleman that used to be as part of the Black Panther Squadron in Burma. And when he saw the picture, he wondered why that had been painted like that. And he was told by the artist that he'd been commissioned by the pilot's sister to paint the picture. And he said, that's Smithy's plane. And he knew it straight away. My sister was very excited and got in touch with me to tell me this. I went to see the gentleman in question, Ken Plumridge, and he in turn put me in touch with Ray Johnson, who was a groundsman on the RAF, who became an AC-1 plumber when the squadron was reformed in 1939, and he joined it at Acklington in the north. And he stayed with that squadron right through to the end of the war, where he became, before that, the Ground Sergeant Armourer of 152 Squadron, and his name was Ray Johnson. I went to see Ray. I met him at Duxford Air Show in 1998. I took my wife and my two sons with me, and from that meeting he encouraged me to do something with his audio tapes. So I felt I now had the story of the whole squadron throughout the war, and with these audio tapes, my brother's letters, logbook, etc., etc., I was able to compile the whole thing together and call it The Birth of the Black Panthers. So that's how it came about, and from that I had enough material to be able to put something together. Having got all this information from Ray, I realised that it would be lovely to be able to put something together for the whole squadron, because this was a squadron that went from the Battle of Britain and joined the Operation Torch when we invaded Algeria and Tunisia, and after that campaign it carried on flying from Malta for the invasion of Sicily, and then flying from Sicily for the invasion of Italy. They were then rested and finally sailed for Egypt, where they picked up Mark 8 Spitfires and flew them to India and across that continent and fought in the Arakan, inside the info box, and were the first squadron back into Burma. So I felt with all this information, it wasn't just my brother I wanted to write about. I wanted to write about the actual 152 Hyderabad squadron itself. And with the information that I'd got from Ray Johnson, I was able to provide all this material that gave me insight, not from the point of view, like my wife would give me, but from the ground staff point of view, so that we had a whole picture of the squadron and all its activities and various theatres. And that's what transpired. I was able to put all this down in words and pictures. Would be very acceptable to everybody and very exciting, because there was only about 2 or 3 squadrons that ever did join in with all the different theatres of war. My brother in particular, of course, was one of the rare pilots that was able to overcome both German, Italian and Japanese aircraft, fighter aircraft, so that his position was quite unique. And being a very charismatic character and also a good artist, he became the squadron artist, and it was he himself that finally painted the Black Panther on the side of the Spitfire, and from that templates could be taken so that all the Spitfires in 152 Hyderabad Squadron could have this Black Panther implanted on them. And it became a very symbolic emblem because they all wanted publicity as much as they could get it, and this 152 Hyderabad get that publicity. Mountbatten knew about the squadron. He also knew about my brother, and my brother actually acted as a flight commander when they were safeguarding Louis Mountbatten on his various journeys across Burma. So that all this material and all these facts and figures were so enthralling that they had to be put down for posterity. And that's what I hope I've been able to achieve. Thank you. If I can show you what I was able to do in the past because of my brother's character, and I want to do as much as I could for his remembrance. What I did was, I started off from date of birth to 1942 and put it in pictures as well as words. So my brother was born in April 1920, and then he managed to finally get into the Air Force in 1940 when he was 20 years old. When he joins the RAF and he goes to Blackpool, and if you hit the bullseye, it takes your photograph, which is what happened. This is a picture of a Harvard where he went to Canada, train at law, and he finally came back and for Spitfires, Heston. Unfortunately, when he was flying the Spitfire from him, he flew over where my father was and hit the flagpole. That, the top part of it embedded itself in the port room, so didn't deny it. 8 foot of it was knocked off and broke glass in the top of the building, and he was grounded for 6 months, stripped of his rank for 3 months, and was sent to Chatham Detention Barracks for 2 weeks. He came to fly at Regnall after 6 months, and this is the type of character he was. He was debagged by his fellow pilots, and they were having quite a hilarious time. He finished his training, he joined 165 Squadron, which is here, with mascot. Very nice Alsatian, and that was called Steve. Here he is from Tang, and pilots were back rearming. This is how his plane looked when he took me to Tangmere in his plane as a 15-year-old ADC cadet. After that we continued his career, and we went to Tunisia, Sicily, Italy, and finally into India. This picture here shows the group of pilots in Malta before we went to Sicily. And this picture here is a group of pilots in India in 1944. This is one with the Black Panther on the side of the plane, so we are now. Eventually he comes home. Although he's got a black against his character because he hit the flagpole, he is eventually commissioned, and he comes home a flight lieutenant. Here he is, a lieutenant with his fiancée in St Andrews, and here he is preparing for the Battle of Britain display in 1948. Unfortunately, he flies the Mark 19 instead of the Mark 16, which is normally carried out for his aerobatic display, and at 300 feet it falls apart in front of his fiancée, who is here in this headline front page news. And this is a letter here from his commanding officer to Mary, saying how terrible it all was. Down here we have Smithy again with his DFM medal and all his campaign medals. This also includes a very charismatic picture of Len with his Italian sword, which he won from an Italian chief of police at Salerno, and sitting in C for Charlie, the plane that he was in when he shot down a Zero for the first time. Here we have drawings that he did before he even went into the RAF, so you can see the type of artist he was. This is a Spitfire Mark I with a First World War SE-5 on its starboard wingtip. And this is a caricature drawn of Len by one of his fellow officers. That really constitutes Len's life in the most cryptic form that I could present it. This picture, by the way, is a drawing or coloured drawing of a pin-up he did on request of a certain Ernie Unstead, who I met in 1998, also at Duxford. Unfortunately, he passed away 1 year later. Or I beg your pardon, no, that was 2006 I met him at Duxford. So he passed away in 2007. And this gives an idea of the artistic talent my brother had, because here we have a pin-up looking very much like Betty Grable, and it was in life size, so they could hang it outside the sergeant's mess. So that is basically my brother's life and all the various places that 152 Squadron went to. Of course, the final outcome of this story is that because the family insisted he be buried back home at Romford, Mary travelled with the cortege and we met for the first time, fell in love the following spring, and I married her. And the catalyst of that story is that Mary was pregnant at the time, and Terry became, my first son became, with a brother Barry, who was my son, became two boys that we brought up over the years. And Terry is very much like his father, my brother, both in manner and bearing and artistic temperament too, because he's a very great artist, and actually designed and did the front cover of Birth of the Black Panthers for me in the form of the book. And there we have it. Thank you.